What's up, Mimer Timers? I am super pumped for today's episode because I get to introduce to you, my dear listeners, a good friend of mine who is actually a lady, believe it or not. I'm sure, my dear listeners, that you love a good sausage party as much as I do. Yes, indeed. I love sausages and I love parties, and I love sausage parties. But here on Mime Time, the glorious Mime Time show, we like to spice it up a bit, just a cheeky bit. So we have Cheska. Cheska is a young global professional killing it everywhere she goes. Born in Seoul, Korea, raised in New Zealand, climbing trees, chasing sheep, to later settling, working in New York. She is a living embodiment of multicultural. At first glance, her journey is awe-inspiring, from Duke University to global finance firm Morgan Stanley, winning awards in Miss World Korea 2015, then paving her own path to manage Korea's largest music festival projects. She's now a global creative director, talk show host covering some of the most relevant topics of our life, interviewing vast number of CEO, entrepreneurs, celebrities, artists, and also the general public. However, what Cheska really wants to share with all of us are the real stories, the struggles, and the successes that built the foundation for who she is today and will become. This is part one of our conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Today, we'll talk about identity and meditation, going a bit into The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And if you like today's episode, please share it with a friend, someone you think who would get something out of it. And please consider leaving a 5-star review or a positive review on whatever platform you're listening to Mime Time on. And if you have any feedback, please hit me up at mime@mimetime.com or message me on Instagram at mimetime. You're listening to Mime Time. It's a show about the Asian diaspora experience and overcoming our identity struggles to become the best versions of ourselves. And let's get to it. Or, you know what time it is? It's Mime Time. Welcome, Mime Timers, to another episode of Mime Time. Do you know what time it is? Yes, it is Mime Time, and we have a very awesome guest. Everyone, please say hello to Cheska. Cheska, say hello.
Hello, Mind Time listeners. So nice to meet you all.
Yeah,
Hi.
Cheska, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I've got my coffee. I've got studio/my house set up. I'm talking to you. So yeah, I'm feeling quite fabulous. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, Cheska and I met not on a whim, I want to say, but she was managing a shoot for a mask company. And so we had mutual connections that knew each other, and they were looking for someone who could do a little cheeky promo, like be on camera, speak English using this mask. And then so that's how we met near the beginning of the year, and it went great. And then I started stalking Cheska. And then I saw that she had a cheeky little operation going called Chess Cafe, where she and a counselor talk about like family and love and relationships. And then we got to talking, and I was like, "Oh, this Cheska, is like a professional career woman who's done a lot of different projects." Then I stalked her LinkedIn, and I saw it's like, "Wow, she was working as a project manager for Stardium." I mean, you've done a quick cheeky bit from being a host on a show, talking with a family counselor, to writing, interpreting, and content managing for all sorts of projects, to winning a couple awards in the Beauty with a Purpose Queen in 2015, to project managing for one of Korea's largest festivals, as well as delivering investment meetings with some huge brands. I mean, that's all cool stuff. I was like, damn, that's a really interesting resume. Impressive. But I want to get into the real Cheska, the deep, dark sides that no one talks about.
I love that. I love that. Come on, bring it on.
Yeah, so I mean, just simply as I do with all my guests, like, what's your story, Cheska? Where did you grow up, and where have you been to in your travels?
Um,
You can focus on the first one first.
yeah, because in terms of where I visited or where I traveled, I think the list becomes wider. But just in terms of, because we're talking about the real Chester, I think some of my upbringings, there's three significant places that nurtured me and sort of grew me. And I was born in South Korea, but much like you, Mime, when I was about 9, I moved to New Zealand with my younger sibling without my parents. My grandma sort of came along with us like a nanny, like she took care of us and all. But I was separated from my parents at 9, went to this foreign country, which was beautiful, by the way. I still hold a very dear place in my heart. New Zealand is more like a hometown to me than anything. But I was 9, and my friends in Kiwis, they're amazing. But I had this really serious case of homesickness. So I had to come back to South Korea when I was about 13 because I was having insomnia and mild cases of anxiety. So I lived in Korea for about like 4 or 5 years till I was 16. And then all my parents decided to move to New York, to the bigger land. That's when my younger siblings and my parents all moved to the state. I graduated high school there and I went to college, Duke University, Blue Devils. Woo! If anyone who's listening knows. Good basketball team, by the way, great basketball team. And I worked in the state after graduation. As you listed, I interned at Morgan Stanley. I was at a really good law firm there. But we'll talk about Korea later on. But eventually I left the US and came to Korea because I was waiting for my green card. So I've been in Korea for about 5 years now. And in the last 5 years, I had a lot of struggle, a lot, and a lot of successes, I would say. Yeah. So it's been a whirlwind of journey, and I'm still in the process of making my life.
Yeah, and maybe still in the process of processing all your different like upbringings and experiences that make you who you are. And then so you only came back to Korea 5 years ago, you said.
Yes.
Uh-huh, I see. Yeah. That's interesting because a lot of Korean or Asian diaspora, I would say, are two-dimensional, and not in a knocking down way, but like it's like where we come from, say China or Korea, and then we move to America or Canada, and then so we have kind of two cultures, right? And so we're stuck in the middle. I talk about this in episode 30 with my guest Kyle Young. He has the podcast What Kind of Asian Are You? So he's Hong Kong Canadian, and we talk about like how being diaspora or being Asian immigrants, we're forced to pick a side. Like, where are we,
Yes.
Chinese or Korean, or are we American or Canadian? And meeting different gyopos, like overseas Koreans or Asian diaspora, I've also met people who've lived in more than a couple places. So I
Exactly.
remember
Like,
meeting exactly like yourselves, which is why I think your story is really interesting and even more unique. I mean, I think I'm unique. Like, oh yeah, I went to America when I was 1, and I didn't grow up speaking Korean. I was the only Asian kid in my neighborhood. Well, I'm so unique, and my struggles are so unfair to me. Life isn't fair. And then,
I know.
um, and then,
And when you're different, you
um,
always get picked on, right? That's the thing. Like, people don't understand that difference actually creates diversity. People think different is dangerous or weird, and they start picking on you for being different.
yeah. And then I didn't understand, why am I being picked for being different? Like, how am I different? Because like I'm not Korean. There's a part of me growing up that felt this way. I had this kind of attitude. Like, I'm not Korean. I'm American. English is my first language. So why
Exactly.
am I being singled out? But of course, I can't deny that when I look in the mirror, I'm the only Asian person in my neighborhood that looks like me, with the black hair and the eyes and the bow tie. Just kidding. I didn't wear a bow tie when I was a kid, but I wish I did. Maybe that would have. No, the kids would have picked
I,
on me even more, I think.
I know. I know. So yeah, I was going to say that's a really interesting topic, and we've sort of chatted about this line before, and up until now, I would say so. Even I think it's only been about 2, 3 years since that I've completely embraced my identity based on my cultural diversity. Yay!
Hooray!
And that's a huge moment for me because if you think about it, it took my entire lifetime. Even going to the good colleges, working in this firm. I had a nice family. Like, no family's perfect, but I had a good family. Even having all of that never made me completely feel like I understood my identity because I, like you said, am I Korean? But I'm not fully committed to the Korean culture. I'm not American because, I just got kicked out of the country because I don't have a green card. And I'm obviously not Kiwi because, that's the hometown for me, but, I don't belong there. I have little bits of everything, but am I? Question mark. So that's one of the biggest conundrums and the most big difficulties that a lot of Asian Americans and anyone who's multicultural sort of face when you're young till you get to a certain age. And if this helps anyone, I think the recommendation or the help that I want to give is you have to constantly ask the question. Like you shouldn't be afraid to keep asking, like, who am I? What am I? Like what do I have? What do I like? What do I don't like? And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask that question because once you start getting deep, it gets really scary because you have to face some of the things that you don't know about yourself or you don't want to know about yourself, right? Because everybody wants to feel secure and belong to something, but the more you question, it gets confusing. But I feel like you have to get over that confusing part in order to discover like what you truly are. And my personal answer was that this diversity makes me incredibly unique and special, like you said, kind of like your bow tie. So yeah, since that 2-3 years ago, I finally claimed my identity, Maya. Claimed it.
Wow, and that is single-handedly the best motherfucking answer I've ever heard on Mime Time Show. Mime Time listeners, thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for tuning into the last episode of Mime Time ever. The purpose of this show is over. Just claim your identity. Just claim it. Be proud of who you are. Accept who you are. Love yourself, and just live a great life and be a good person. All right, tune in next time. Nope, just kidding. It's the last episode ever. So, wow. I mean, that's really golden. That's really golden. Thank you so much for saying that because I mean, I was gonna ask you, like how do you feel about your identity now? What's your attitude towards it? But that is so golden, and just that you went out of your way to just say that in the past couple of years you've just accepted who you are completely and totally. I think that is so valuable, and I mean, there's so many things to unpack there because going
Yes.
back to like my childhood, I didn't have these kinds of conversations. I didn't have any hyungs or nunas, people older than me who could tell me things like, hey mom, like you're the only Asian kid in this neighborhood. You're unique, you're different, you've got a special name and you've got a special destiny. You have immense, incredible potential to be whoever you want to be, whatever you want to apply to. Don't be stuck into your negativity and insecurity and depression. Like if you just work at yourself, if you just like clean your room and do some push-ups and like try to be friendly and just try different things out and see what you like, see what you enjoy, all that, journey stuff, then you will become an incredible human being and like nothing can stop you. I wish someone had told me these things when I was 10, 15, 18. And so I'm very fortunate to have two older brothers who did mentor me a lot. And I'm also very grateful for my parents who, although in the past, I would resent them for not understanding my struggle. I realized they were going through an immense struggle of their own, adapting to another country, another culture, not speaking English. So while it was unfair for me to be the only Asian growing up in my neighborhood, going to school, getting called chink, and to go back to China when I'm not Chinese, and then to go home,
That's not even the
right?
country.
Is that what you heard in New Zealand? Oh, I go back to China, mate.
Fortunately, I didn't. But I've seen some cases. I've heard of some cases, and it's like even if it doesn't happen to you necessarily, like I was always aware. I was always aware, and just because that's one of the things that I feel very fortunate about, and it's just luck. I couldn't have stopped these things from happening. They just didn't happen to me, which is just luck. But I've definitely saw my younger siblings being kicked out of the playground because there were some kids who said they didn't want to play with an Asian kid. Even when I was in high school or applying to college, it wasn't like a racism, but you just know you're different, and the clique that forms, the cool cliques that form in high school, you know you're not going to be one of them. And as a teenager, that kind of works on your self-esteem. Like right now, we look at it and say that wasn't even cool, but at the time, that's like all you want. You want to be one of them. You want to feel secure. You want to belong somewhere. And I think they always manifested in one way or another. And I knew of it. I knew of it. Um, and it was, for me, actually, it was particularly harder when I went to college because it wasn't racism, but it was actually at college when I realized I have something that these Americans don't have, whether that be certain looks, whether that be certain like family, like the southern, rich family folk, or the kind of education they received, or whether it be just the way they dressed themselves or they um, spoke, like things they knew, and that had a huge toll on my self-esteem because it was already a good college, so all these smart kids there, but they're so beautiful, like inside and out, or at least I thought at the time, inside and out. And they have all these, credentials. And what do I have compared to them? I felt like, oh, I don't have crap. I'm just a smart Asian kid from Long Island. And that started to really have a huge toll on who I am and my self worth, actually. And that's why I mentioned to you and to anyone who is listening who is going through this that you really have to ask a lot of questions. Otherwise, if that root is not firmly planted, which won't be, it takes years of practice, but it keeps shaking and you feel shaky. And that just, you can fall into depression, which I did, like a mild case of depression, confusion. But you need to go through that process in order to find out, oh crap, I'm actually pretty effing great because I have all these things that they don't. And the reason that I was able to fully embrace it since 2, 3 years ago was because, well, first of all, that I, like you said, I accepted it, but that cultural diversity actually gave me this perspective of seeing things, of communicating with people, of understanding with a great advantage. Like, I'm sure you mind too, but when you have this cultural background, you actually feel more like an observer. And that gives you an incredible power in a lot of circumstances because you're not in it. You're not seeing this stuff from up close. Like you can take a few steps back. And that helped me in career, like business, people's relationship, and just advancing forward in every avenue general. But as a young kid, you don't see that at the time. So I just really want to tell this to anyone who's going through it or who's going through it like I did, and probably.
Yeah, preach, sister, preach. The world needs to hear this because I assume when you went to New Zealand 9 years old, you're living your life there, going to school, some cheeky grammar school, and
Yes.
like you were probably very confused. You're like, why am I here? What's the purpose? Like, who am I? Why are these kids kind of treating me or looking at me differently? Like being a kid in just like one culture, just being, I don't know, a typical white American kid, typical, white New Zealander, or just Korean growing up in Korea, life is confusing enough as it is. But when you're
Exactly.
thrown into a whole different pool, a whole different dimension, and and if you're not fortunate enough to have maybe say like really conscious parents who are aware that their child is going to be confused and have identity issues and wonder who they are. Are they Korean? Are they American? Are they white? Are they black? If they're like half white or half Korean or half black and half Asian, you know,
Mhm.
what I wish that maybe my parents had told me is just like, hey, mom, like those other kids wish that they were like you. Like don't listen to what they say. Like
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
have your destiny, you have your life to
Right.
live, and they just don't understand. Don't take it too personally, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna turn out just fine. Just be a good person, treat people with kindness. That's universal, right? So
Mhm.
we didn't have these things, right? So like I wish whether it was me 9 years old growing up in North Carolina or for people like you growing up 9 years old in New Zealand, that there were voices. We didn't have the internet at the time to find, even if there were
No.
people who had these conversations and were like influencing each other in positive, life affirming ways. There was no way for us to access that. There was no online content for us to absorb. No podcasts, no, probably very few books. There was no
Yeah.
YouTube of people like us having these kinds of conversations about where we reflect on our past and like the message that we want to inspire to the next generation so that no one has to go through a pain we felt through again, right? So that they don't have to
Oh
grow up
God,
and start a show called Mime
you're
Time.
so old. Not
And
that old.
I'm just kidding. I mean, but it's just like, hey, this is why I became and there's so much that we can talk about, Jessica, but like the whole,
Yes.
insecurity, like growing up with a different background and having the unique perspective and being the only Asian kid, what that
Mm.
taught me was compassion. So that
Oh my God.
when,
Yes. 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 Yes.
so that, and like understanding perspective, so that
Mm-hmm.
when I see that lone kid or that lone person at a party or at the club, then I go up to them and say, "Hey, how's it going? What brings you out tonight? Are you having a good time? You're having a good time. Hey, come meet some of my friends." You know, without expecting anything in return, because I know what it feels like to be the lone awkward loser at a party,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and
Right.
that's why, because how my insecurities, how they manifested themselves over a lifetime, is that I became a club promoter at one of the hottest hip hop clubs in Seoul for a few years before COVID. And I became like the life of the party, and I have all this validation and made all these connections with successful people who admire me and respect me for who I am, like celebrities, entrepreneurs, successful artists, you name it, just like people who are professionals in their careers in all sorts of industries. And then people, some multimillionaire tech entrepreneur Hyung, or some, really established career Nuna is like, they look up to me. They want to buy me a meal. They want to spend time with me. And it's so humbling, right? And it's all because of the insecurities I had as a kid, that I was just a awkward Asian American loser with, no sense of who he was and not feeling deserving or worthy of love or attention or respect, right? So the whole point of the show is like, hey, if a bum like me can turn his life around and manifest all these insecurities in a positive way to compensate for his loser past, then maybe some of you guys are listening. Maybe if you're younger than me, if you're listening to this, you're 15, 16, 18, 20, early 20s, whatever, then perhaps you can exceed me. My dad
Oh.
always told this to me. He said, and maybe like I was playing guitar because he really loved guitar and he taught me guitar. And I would like learn the chords or whatever, I would learn a certain lick. And then my dad would look at me very, very proudly and be like, "Oh, mime, you better than me. Oh, very good." And I was like, and I didn't appreciate that as a kid, but I knew that my dad wanted his sons to have a better future, for one, and that two, like that's what I would want for my sons, right? Or the next generation. I would want them to do way better than our generation, and they have the potential. Like if you're listening to this now and you don't have any fucking skills and you don't have a fucking network and like you hate yourself or whatever, look at me. Like I hated myself. I hated every moment of my life. Not every moment of my life, but I had some very dark moments. Like I had moments when I wanted to see the world burn, and I thought like I would never be worthy of like love. Like I would never date a girl. I would just be playing games until I was 40 in my mom's basement type shit. And
Wow.
then I came to Korea and I became a club promoter. I met my share of lovely ladies, and I made many good friends, and I've had lots of wonderful experiences and connections. And then I think, wow, like my life is a fucking dream. And so I had to go through all that cultural identity bullshit and the struggles and the self-loathing for me to really appreciate who I am today in this life that I live now, which is so beautiful. And it justifies it. Like, it makes all the moments of pain and insecurity and confusion, it makes it worth it, because now I have direction and clarity and focus. And I cut out the noise, that refrigerator hum of negative energy from the past. And I focus on that pure, beautiful, high conscious signal, which is like
Yes,
love
brother.
and like
Yes,
the
brother.
potential that I
Preach.
have, right? Like love for humanity, compassion, wanting everyone to elevate, wanting to elevate myself. And so if you're listening to this now, like you don't have to go through, I have an unfair advantage because I went through a lot of shit. So I compensate for it by trying to be the best version of myself. It's like whoever's listening to this now, they can start now. They can, you don't have to be perfect. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. Mime Time wasn't built in a day for sure. I'm still building it. But you can build something for yourself. You can like mentally, physically, fitness wise, culturally, And you can learn to accept all of who you are, your dark side and your light side, and then just work on that. And just like Cheska said, just keep, asking the questions. It's okay to feel lost. We all feel lost. And actually, no one has their shit together. No society,
No,
nobody has their shit together.
and everything that you said is so amazing. Preach, brother. I would raise my hands to all of what you said. The one thing that I would want to add to that is, out of everything that you said, mine is, I I don't want people to think that it's going, like, how we have this mindset where we listen to something like inspirational like this, like I do too, and then I think, okay, from tomorrow, starting today, I'm going to change everything, and then you make these changes and positive streaks for like a couple of days, and then you get like drop, and then you feel, okay, I'm back to where I am. Obviously, I'm not going to get out of this rut. Do not feel like this is a process that's going to completely change your life in like a few months. I know there's so many ads, like, we live in a society where everything has to happen so quickly. Everything can be ordered on a push of a button, like diet fads, and you can lose your weight in 4 weeks, do this. Or, even like dating wise, Tinder apps, swipe left, swipe right, everything's so quick, so easy. But if you look at yourself, like everything that you have right now is a consequence of millions and billions of little things, both conscious and unconscious things that happen through your entire life. They cannot change with like a flick of a button, or just because you set your mind a certain way. And I'm telling this because I was a victim of that too. I thought, okay, I'm going to become, I don't know, this kind of person in like 5 weeks. And it doesn't happen like, that's a great start, but it's a continuous process. Like once you get over one, then there's another one to elevate yourself. Then so there's another one to elevate yourself. Like that's why I said we are both still in progress till we die. Like we can continuously evolve ourselves all throughout life. So I don't want anyone to feel disappointed because they listen to this and say, oh, they can do it, but I've done it before and it never worked. No, it is working if you try. Everything is working if you try. It's just, you just have to keep going. Like the water doesn't boil at 98 degrees. Like you have to hit that 100, then it starts boiling. But that doesn't mean the heat is not there. Like I really want people to know that. I think that's another big, because just because for some kids living in North Carolina or like different parts of the world, after they listened to this, they would go out in the street and kids would still bully them, right? And they might think, okay, well, my situation hasn't changed. No matter how kind I am towards them, they're not changing the attitude. But that's, don't look at that as a sign that you're not changing. I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh no, that's a huge caveat, very important caveat. Yeah, and it is adding on to what I say. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. So if, especially if you're younger listening to this, then yeah, you have a lot of time. You have a lot of time, and I'm also brainwashed by the whole hustle culture that like, yeah, do it, like hustle, like, why aren't you like Elon Musk working 140-hour weeks or some shit like that? Like it's, I mean, those are just like the exceptional models. But I hesitate to even call them models because that's just not practical for every individual given one's like mental, physical state, or like, like the genes that decide like, are they a morning person? Are they early morning person when they wake up? Or do they have to wake up a bit later? And is that the most optimal thing for their daily productivity and health? People from
Exactly.
different family situations. Maybe you already have like a husband or a wife and kids. Maybe you have to take care of like your sick grandma or something like that. So everyone has their own struggles, and everyone's coming from their own genetic or cultural predispositions. Like it's not everyone can be like Elon Musk, obviously, and that's okay. You just have to go at your own pace, just like I've gone at my own pace. So what I'm trying to find the balance for myself. So as I tell the listeners here, I try to find that right balance between like pushing my limits as hard as I can, but also giving myself like the grace and the understanding to tell myself that I am enough. Right. So it's
Yeah.
always this battle. Am I enough? Am I enough? Will I, achieve what I want in life? Like, am I worthy of love and acceptance and blah, blah, blah? So then there's a part of you that might say like, well, no, I need to earn it. I need to make more money. I need to start this business. I need to push out this art. Then I will be satisfied with myself. So you can use that as, like fear and anger. Like, I'll show those kids. I'll show up to my 10-year reunion with like a Ferrari and a hot trophy girlfriend or something like that. And I'll show those kids who picked on me in high school or something, absurd. Like, you can use that, but that cannot be your long-term goal, because let's say you were to get those things, then what's the meaning or purpose? Then you lose the plot. The plot is to find the kind of person that you want to be. And me standing before you now, who I am in terms of appearance and my looks and the way that I think and the people that I associate with, the experiences I have, this is like a dream come true. It's like when I was in my darkest moments, very depressed and very alone, there was a part, like half of me thought that, like I would never aspire or achieve to anything of substance or purpose. But then I think even deeper than that, I knew that I had this potential, and I knew that I could be the man of my dreams, but I just could never get to that point. But now that I'm here and this moment right now, just to acknowledge that I am who I am now as a result of years of efforts and experiences and mistakes.
Absolutely.
I realize like my life is actually a dream, because who I am is the dream. I'm the dream. I'm the dream that I had when I was a kid. I'm the dream. I'm literally the dream.
I hope you get the sound.
I'm getting the sound.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to find it sounds so cheesy. You have to find your dream, or if that word is too cheesy, like find the person that you want to be. You have role models just like I do. Maybe it's me, maybe it's Cheska, and then try to find your own version of that. Transcend all the bullshit, all the hate, all the negative emotion, and try to find what the real you is, the best version of you, the best 5'2" Jane Kim, or the best 5'6" John Liu, whoever you are, right? And it doesn't, and of course this applies to people of all races and backgrounds. But like, I just want to say, yeah. So I find this a struggle. I find that I want to push myself, but at the same time, if I push myself too hard, then I'll get discouraged when I don't reach my expectations. So you have to find what's realistic and pragmatic and work on it day in and day out. Yeah. Absolutely. And then there was one more thing I wanted to say, which was the point for me, going back to what you said about how in the past several years you've come to accept who you are. For me, coming to Korea, not speaking the language, but then learning to the point of like to an intermediate level where I can have a conversation with just about anybody, I realized that I will never be Korean. So that's out of the way. And of course, like I could have understood that logically before I came to Korea. Like if I go to Korea, I'll never be Korean. But having to actually try to learn all the ins and outs of Korean culture, the society, living here, paying taxes, filling out paperwork, trying to, do the right insa at the right 45-degree angles or whatever to whatever superior or acquaintance that I meet, all these little things. I realized that Korean people will never see me as quite them. And you know what? That's okay, because I tried. It's not in my control anymore. So I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but for me, I found that immensely rewarding. It was very gradual. I realized, even if I study Korean Joseon dynasty history and I read like ancient Joseon dynasty texts in old Korean, and I'm able to understand it, and I'm able to write a thesis and give a presentation on like Korean culture, ancient history and culture, and I know all the ins and outs. I'm still very Americanized as a person. It's part of my personality, my psychology. I'm very Western, and I can't change that even if I wanted to. I couldn't be. I've tried to be Korean as I could be, but I can't. And so what that does is, because I tried, you could say that I hit a wall. I realized, this is beyond my control. So then I'm just like, good job, mime. I'm still fascinated with Korean history. I'm still very proud of my Korean heritage, and I'm still learning Korean every day. Every day I learn a new word or something, and I still talk to Korean people in Korean, and I want to meet more Korean people and have Korean conversations. But I realized, I will never be one of them totally, just as I might not be 100%, mainstream American or or white American or whatever. But you know what? That's okay, because I'm a unique snowflake. I'm my own individual with my own unique perspective and therefore gift to offer the world. And there are enough Korean people being Korean. There are enough American people being American. There's enough New Zealand people being New Zealand. And I, not knowing where I fit in, I wanted to fit in all the cliques, all the groups. I want to learn about everything. I want to be a part of everybody. So when I was a kid, I would kind of bounce around the cliques, like the hip hop guys, and then the A students, the honor students taking AP classes, and then like the school dropouts. Like I would hang out with everyone because like I want everyone to like me, you know. But now I'm just like, and then I became a party promoter coming to Korea. I met all kinds of people, you know, like acoustic musicians at the open mics, stand-up comedians, spoken word artists, and then, you know, going to the hip hop club or the rock shows and meeting like the rock heads and the hip hop, the expat rappers or the Korean rappers. And I want everyone to know me, and I want the validation. Like, and I love all the different music and all the different arts. You know, I was kind of greedy in that way. But now I realize like, oh, I'm not particularly 100% committed to any of these things, just like I'm not committed to 100% to the Korean identity or the American identity. And you know what? That's okay. I'm some kind of mix. It's not black and white. You could say that it's gray, but it's also like a gradient. I don't know. Everyone's their own unique color. And just like I'm my own unique mime, no one can be who I am. And so I think about all the experiences I had, all the good people that I've met, the things that I've done, and the way that I've improved in my mental state. And so even when I'm down, you know what I tell myself? Like, look at the past 8-9 years, mime. Look at what you've done. The fact is that's a train. That's proof and evidence of the work that you put in. And no one can judge you for that. So if you think you're not hitting your goals, just think about how far you've come. And then that is the mental exercise that gives me great reassurance and gives me like, okay, I'm doing the right thing overall. At least I'm making steady progress. And even though life can be very confusing and there are all sorts of crazy dramas and challenges, I will only become stronger and more intelligent and like quicker and faster as a result. I just rambled on a bit there.
No, no. Everything that you said, you know, I think you and I both definitely concur on this statement and the message. I honestly have nothing more to add to that. But I wish more people would be aware of this, because I was, when you were talking, I was actually thinking about when I was young and when I was going through, or I was also putting myself in your shoes and thinking about mine going through all this. We can only know in hindsight, right? We can only know and look back at this and say, oh, all these things have happened because they were trying to lead me to here, or because I overcame. I'm this person. But when you are going through it, it it's so freaking difficult. You know, you want to give up every single day. At least I did. I don't know. And you know, I would cry, or I would, you know, pray, and I would, you know, lament, and I would, you know, blame, not myself, but like blame something. And because it's so hard. It's so hard when you're going through it. But I just wish there was a way to let them know that everything is worth it if you can. You know, you can just pick yourself back up and try it again and try it again. Because I'm I'm still going through it. You know, because like we said, once you accomplish something, you keep wanting to elevate. So I have new goals, I have new things. And I'm still doing the same struggles that I did to get to where I am. It's just for a different level. So it's like an ongoing process. So it's one of the great mysteries of life, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and life will always be a mystery. And who you are will always be a mystery. Because to
Mhm.
answer that eternal perennial question, like who am I mean, that's a hard question to answer. Like you can argue that it's not something that could be answered with language or even with thoughts,
Oh,
right?
no, 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 no. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, and that book was a huge influence on my life.
I have the book. I love that book. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, The Power of
Mhm.
Now. Depending on who's listening, I would highly recommend that book, but it depends on what area of life, what stage of life you're at now.
Mm, I
Did you
agree
want to
on
say
that.
something?
I mean,
Hmm.
I loved. We didn't even talk about this. This is more of a synchrony. Like, I've been a huge. That book had helped me open my perspective in a whole different way. And you know, everybody talks about, oh, live in the present moment. You focus on the present. And I had no idea. Well, not no idea, but it all sounded good. But you know, what does that really mean? Like, I'm living in the present moment. How much more present could I be? You know, I'm sipping this coffee right now. I'm talking to you. Like, I am in the present. But if you read that book, and I'm sure, Mom, you can chime in. But that book really teaches you how our human mind is so unreliable, right? It's in the Buddha, they call it the monkey, like it jumps from one place to another. And what you're thinking doesn't necessarily, it's not always the right thing. It's only a reflection of your past experiences being transferred onto something, or your thoughts that you have, habitually kept in the past. So that book really sort of helped me to see, oh, okay, I wasn't really living in the present. My mind has always been in the future, and I was anxious because my body is in the present. But my thought is, it's like you're too displaced human body. Like your body is here, but your neck is like stretched out. So of course you'll be in pain. So that that book really, I wouldn't say it helped me to become a new version of myself, but it helped me to see what kind of state I was living in, and that it wasn't a very healthy state. I love that book as much as you probably.
Yeah, I love that book, and I often go back to it. I mean, once in a while, I'll go back to read it again, and I feel like I have a deeper understanding of it, and I make new connections. The interesting thing about that book, or that perspective of spirituality or the mysticism, is I think adds a lot of practicality. Like if you look at it from a practical or pragmatic kind of way, like it will relieve your stress. It will lower your stress levels. It will increase your gratitude for life and humanity and the struggles that we all face. And it'll take you out of your head for a little bit. And what that means is like you'll become a third party observer to your own thoughts
Right.
and your own thoughts, which are not actually voluntary. We all identify with the thoughts that come from our mind, but that's not actually something that you have control of. So it's not a conscious decision for you to even have your thoughts. Because if you had a conscious decision to not have thoughts, like if I could have a conscious decision, I would just not think. I would just not have thoughts. Or I
Mhm.
would just get the power to just only have thoughts insofar as they help me accomplish a goal. Like Eckhart Tolle says, like it's the mind is a great tool for solving a problem, but that's what it
Right.
is. It's a tool, and it's always going to find problems because like that's how we evolve. So then it's kind of like, well, what is my identity? Am I my thoughts? Am I my mind? And not necessarily from Tolle's perspective. Like am I Korean, or am I American? Am I a man? Am I a boy? Like what am I? And then what Tolle might argue, or what I think he states, is that you are the silent observer behind your thoughts. You're the conscious
Mhm.
energy. You are the consciousness. That the thoughts are not necessarily you. So that gave me a lot of peace over the years. I highly recommend that book, but I think something I want to talk more about my podcast as well is that, well, I still live my day-to-day life, and after a nice 20-minute meditation session, like I still have to go work and pay the bills, and I still have to meet people, and my I can have a glorious 20-minute meditation session and then just feel at peace, like, I'm not thinking any thoughts,
Mhm.
and like I don't have any problems right now because I don't there's no tiger chasing me. I don't have like all the shit that happened in my past. That doesn't have to affect me in this moment. All the worries of the future and paying bills and paperwork and taxes and my future or this podcast, you know what? That's all in the future. But the future and the past, they're not even real. There's only ever the eternal present now. So I don't have a fucking problem right now. I don't need to be stressed about everything. Like I can have peace and joy and fulfillment in this moment with myself and love my life and just have gratitude and just stay in this glorious high consciousness, shining pride. Alarm goes off and then I have to oh shit, like I have to do my day. Right. I got, and then you still, even after all the years of meditation, right? You could be like a fucking Buddhist monk. I'm sure they still have thoughts after decades. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
difficult for any modern human being to completely quiet the mind. And you're still going to be Asian or half Asian or black or white, right? You're still
Exactly.
going to have to
Exactly.
deal with issues of
Exactly.
cultural identity. So I want
Exactly.
to present a potential path to people, like, yeah, delve into spirituality and find out who you are and do meditation. And at the same time, have the acceptance for yourself that, like, okay, after enlightenment, the laundry, as they say, right? Like, I was like, oh, like I understand everything about the universe and whatever, but I still have to, pay the bills and do my laundry. It's like, oh, like in a moment of great glorious meditation, like I'm in tears, like it's like, oh, the universe is so perfect, beautiful, amazing, but then you might have to drive in traffic and you swear at some other guy for cutting you off.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yes.
So there needs to be, the acceptance, like, hey, you're human, and you'll never become like Buddha or Jesus or King Sejong, whoever like your saint is. But just having the practical day-to-day routines and steps and attitude will get you as far as you can. And it's always a valuable progress, a journey. And then, you know what? It's better to ask yourself the question, who am I? Meditate on that, than to not do that at all, because it at least has given me a great deal of peace in terms of dealing with my identity. This is something I don't hear anyone talk about. Like Eckhart Tolle is great and the spiritual mystics are great. But like in terms of using that to practically deal with your identity crisis or your existential crisis of the past in terms of your racial, ethnic, cultural identity. This is something like I really want to get onto this show. It's great that you have also read The Power of Now. We are both the same cult members. Oh,
I wish we could do another just a segment of this because there's so much like literature and people that I want to bring up related to this. But one of the things that, and I'll try to shorten it because I don't want this to fully launch into it because I feel like it's an important topic that can go on for hours and hours. But what you mentioned about meditation and then laundry is another important point that I'm also learning at the moment is there's Emily Fletcher. She wrote a book on stress less, and it talks about it doesn't just talk about this meditation as being the ultimate like feel good, change your life kind of thing. There's after you meditate, you have to quote unquote manifest, which means like you said, we have to act on it, right? Then the meditation is only clearing the mind, clearing the burdens and this fog so that you can see it better. Now, if you see it better and you're at peace, you're grounded, now you need to drive and get to work. Like you said, get the stuff done, house chores that you've pushed for a long time. Make that phone call for a job that you've been putting off. Like meditation isn't like a magic that says it's going to get the stuff done for you. It's to get you ready so that you can do the things that you want to do. So I think that's another thing that people should know about meditation, which I'm still learning, so I'm not preaching to anyone, but I feel like that's a really, really important point that you brought up. So I just wanted to like highlight.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, and again, meditation. I mean, it deserves its own podcast. There are, of course, many books written on it, and also I want to add that the intention of the meditation is also very important. It like these days, I don't know. I've been for the past 2 months, I've been meditating every day for 20 minutes
Oh
in the morning
wow!
as part of my morning
Great.
routine. And
Yeah.
then in the past, like I would be a bit more, how do I say, like get a bit more mystical about it. And then like I would do it with more intention towards like gratitude and towards
Uh,
trying to like find enlightenment, whatever that means, right? Like try to elevate to another plane, or I don't know, maybe hallucinate, right? There's all these crazy different kinds of meditations that you can do, or maybe with a guided book, or just it's kind of like lucid dreaming, but you're like just sitting in a chair
right,
breathing
right,
in a
right,
dark
right.
room, right there. But
Right.
for me, my intention these days is purely practical. If a good thought of gratitude or something holy and elevated comes into my mind as I meditate, then like I'll appreciate that and notice it. But in general, like I'm very all about like the practical side these days. So
Mm.
it depends on the intention and the attitude and the purpose for which you go into meditation. Your meditation could be like, oh, who am I? Am I Korean? Am I American? Or it could be specifically about like creativity, or it could be about, your parents, maybe you want to like and then like you have like an agenda to like meditate on like your parents' relationship. And then you write in a journal after that for the purpose of like improving relationship or overcoming past trauma, right? There are different modes of meditation. But for me, these days, it's more about just clearing the mind so
Mm.
that so I loosen what do you call it? Like the neural pathways that make me impulsive. Like, for example, instinctively going to your phone to check a message or Instagram or some shit like that. But now when I meditate, like I'm less likely to do that because I'm strengthening the consciousness and the power of the consciousness of the silent observer, the silent witness to my thoughts. Then I'm able to not do the stupid decisions or do the bad habits, like going for a drink. I mean, I still make mistakes and I still like falter in whatever it is that I'm
Yeah,
doing, but
we
at
all
least
do.
I'm reducing it. Yeah. Okay. So let's stop talking about meditation. We'll just keep meditating on meditations. And that's all the time that we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mime Time and for listening to this part 1 of this cheeky chat with Cheska. Tune in for about a week or so later, and you'll hear part 2 of this amazing conversation that we're having. Oh, baby. Have another great week of life, and I'll talk to you next time. Mime Time. Oh, yeah.